When you look at the Middle East right now, man, the tension is just palpable. It's this massive, deeply complex puzzle involving Iran, the U.S., Israel, the whole shebang. And if you're tuning into the global conversation, you've probably noticed that pretty much everyone is totally fixated on one specific maritime bottleneck, the Strait of Hormuz. But in today's explainer, we're diving into a strategic analysis that suggests this global fixation, it might actually be a massive mistake. The real game, the actual long-term strategic play, is happening at an entirely different geopolitical door. So we're going to unpack the hidden realities, the actual strategic targets, and the economic ripple effects that are literally flying completely under the radar right now.
So the big question driving our analysis today is simply this. Is the Strait of Hormuz the real target? Well, the source material we're looking at makes a seriously compelling case that it is, in fact, a massive geographic decoy. Yeah, sure, it's a super vital artery for global oil, absolutely crucial. But keeping our eyes glued there, it kind of blinds us to the actual maneuvers happening behind the scenes. We've got to look beyond the obvious choke points if we really want to understand what the major powers are positioning themselves for.
Which brings us to part one of the analysis, closing the back door.
To really wrap our heads around this geographic decoy, we have to look at the architecture of Middle Eastern oil transit. Think of it in terms of a front door and a back door. For years, the global fear has been that if the Strait of Hormuz, which is our front door, closes, well, global energy markets would just completely collapse. But actually, Saudi Arabia possesses what the source describes as some massive strategic foresight. They've got an insurance pipeline. They built this enormous network that transports oil directly across the country, entirely bypassing the strait, and offloads it straight into the Red Sea. So, in other words, if the front door at Hormuz gets locked, it's theoretically not a fatal problem for Saudi Arabia, because that back door to the Red Sea, it's wide open.
But here is where the narrative completely flips on its head. Contrast the safety of that Red Sea backdoor with the reality on the ground right now. The Houthis have officially announced that they are going to block Saudi ships from safely passing through the Red Sea. So when you look at the macro picture here, Iran isn't just threatening one door. By leveraging this situation, the source argues Iran is effectively working to close both the front door at Hormuz and the back door at the Red Sea at the exact same time.
And this brings us to a really chilling realization highlighted by the author of the original research. They said, when there is no escape route, wars are never small. Think about that. By systematically shutting down both avenues of maritime transit, the stage is really being set for a massive, inescapable conflict. Because when nations feel entirely cornered geographically and economically, the scale of retaliation fundamentally changes. We're not just talking about disrupting trade anymore. We're talking about existential economic suffocation.
So let's move into part two, the real targets.
If Hormuz isn't the ultimate prize, then what are the major players actually targeting? Well, the source material breaks down three distinct, highly calculated motives. First off, Iran's primary regional goal is presented as choking Saudi Arabia economically. On the flip side, we have the United States and Israel. And as a quick aside, the source material notably and specifically refers to Israel in its native text as a fake state, which we're just neutrally reporting here so you get an accurate reflection of the author's original analysis. But according to the source, the U.S. and Israel are laser-focused on a completely different target, neutralizing Iranian nuclear assets. And hovering above all of this is the United States' broader perspective, which is looking decades into the future. Notice something? None of these core driving motives are actually about the Strait of Hormuz itself.
To underscore this focus on nuclear assets, the source highlights a specific Axios report. It notes that Donald Trump has signaled intentions to aggressively target underground Iranian nuclear centers, specifically citing locations like the Pickaxe Mountain facility. This really demonstrates that the true military friction points are these deeply embedded strategic assets, not just surface-level shipping lanes. The real focus is on permanently degrading capabilities that are buried deep, deep underground.
And this brilliantly illustrates the kind of timeline we're actually looking at. The source points out recent nuclear agreements signed between the United States and Saudi Arabia. If you look at the explicit phrasing used by the U.S. Energy Department, they describe these multi-billion-dollar partnerships as spanning, quote, decades long. The analytical takeaway here is pretty profound. Nations do not sign massive, structurally binding decades-long agreements to prepare for a localized skirmish that's just going to blow over in a few weeks. No way. They do it to prepare for a completely reshaped, long-term geopolitical reality.
Let's dive into part three, 5 options for Iran.
Faced with this high-stakes structural conflict, what can Iran actually do in response to these mounting pressures? The
The source author has conducted a detailed assessment and identified 5 distinct strategic options currently on the table. Now, while 3 of these are described as tactical regional moves, the author stresses that 2 of these options possess the terrifying power to completely shake the foundations of the global economy. I mean, if triggered, these 2 specific maneuvers wouldn't just affect the Middle East, they would send massive shockwaves through markets worldwide.
Fascinatingly, this deep dive geopolitical research comes to us via a unique distribution model. It's actually sponsored by TapTapSend. As part of fully examining the source material, it's worth noting the creator highlights this as a fast, secure, and regulated money transfer app that's authorized to deliver funds globally in minutes, and notably with 0 charges on minimum transactions.
In the original material, the creator mentions that using the promo code AMINA provides specific transfer bonuses across various regions. We're talking £10 in the UK, $20 in the US and Canada, 30 in Australia, and €10 in the EU. But honestly, more importantly for our context of this analysis, the creator offered to send the full, detailed document outlining those 5 explosive Iranian options directly to viewers who commented the word Iran on the original post. It's just a fascinating look at how deep geopolitical analysis is being distributed to audiences today.
Which leads us right into part 4, the beginning of many wars.
Looking at the projected timeline, we arrive at a really chilling conclusion regarding the escalating scale of what we're witnessing here. The author posits that we are not looking at a traditional conflict with a clear beginning, a middle, and a neat little peace treaty at the end. Instead, we are entering a brutal loop. The war will start, it'll reach a boiling point, and then it'll temporarily pause. But it won't end. It will inevitably restart, pause again, and just continue indefinitely. This cycle of violence is going to grind on, serving primarily as a vortex that slowly but surely drags in new geopolitical actors over time.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly striking thought from the source. This war will be the beginning of many wars. The board is set, the true targets are locked in, and the decoys? Well, they're working. What you really should take away from this explainer is that we aren't watching the finale of a regional dispute. We are watching the opening moves of a generational, ever-expanding conflict. So the only real question left is, how many cycles of violence will it take before the rest of the world is dragged onto this chessboard? And who exactly will be the next player to enter the war? Definitely something we need to keep a very close eye on.